What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you on a Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. And folks, the week is finally here. We have the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes traveling to Eugene to face the number 3 Oregon Ducks in a primetime matchup in Autzen Stadium. ESPN's College Game Day will be on campus Saturday morning. There, you couldn't ask for a better matchup. And joining me to break it all down is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. Justin, how are we doing? It's finally here.
Yeah, excited like everybody else. Excited to talk about it. Excited to see it unfold on Saturday. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. These are the games that make college football. I mean, obviously a great upset like Vanderbilt over Alabama. Those are a ton of fun, but these are the games that move the needle in the sport, and pretty cool. I think I did catch a good quote from Ryan Day that just says, a game like this, early conference game, with the outcome, you kind of get to control your own destiny moving forward, and that's kind of what's on the line for both these teams.
Both of these teams enter Saturday's game at 5-0. Justin, the Ducks won the last matchup, the last time these two teams played in Columbus, but a lot has changed since then. Anthony Brown was the quarterback at that time. Mario Cristobal was the head coach at that time. CJ Stroud was in Columbus. Now he's with the Houston Texans. So it's kind of a clean slate of sorts, if you will. And this is a game that I think comes with a tremendous amount of anticipation for Oregon fans, because this is a matchup that they were kind of robbed of, right? A couple of years ago, back in 2020, you had the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. You also had just horrendous wildfires that would have prevented the game from happening either way. So I think that Oregon fans and probably the Oregon football team enters this week just ready to kind of get a little bit of vengeance and maybe having some extra fire burning inside them.
Yeah, we've seen these two teams start to cross over on the recruiting trail, which I understand doesn't impact the team per se. But, you see these coaches, obviously Coach Kelly, Chip Kelly's over at Ohio State. Carlos Locklin left Oregon last year to go to Ohio State. So getting more and more crossover. And I think that, I think this is very preliminary, but I think this is really something that will end up becoming one of the bigger rivalries in the sport. And I think what's going to happen moving forward in this move to become more like the NFL of college football, you're going to see these interconference rivalries like this become very paramount. So, Oregon, Ohio State, obviously the SEC's got Georgia, Bama, and others. Those are going to be the ones that kind of shape college football in the playoff in the future, I believe. So, this right here, I just think we're on deck for, round one. Potentially round one of this year alone. They could, obviously, depending on how things unfold, they could meet again later on in the conference championship. So a lot of storylines here, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
You said they could meet later on. I was talking to someone the other day that was saying that they could face each other 3 times this year. You have Saturday, you have potential conference title game, and then who knows what's going to happen with this expanded 12-team playoff. So plenty of opportunities for the Ducks and the Buckeyes to get this potential rivalry going. I don't know if you necessarily even need to call it a rivalry, but it's two great teams with a ton of history. Obviously, Ohio State has more than Oregon, but Oregon's really kind of ascended into one of the premier programs, one of the premier teams in college football. So it's going to be a blast. There is plenty to talk about. I'm going to be making the trip up to Eugene to attend that game and cover it with my guy Lyndon Heil for everyone over at ScoopDuck. And speaking of ScoopDuck, we got to let you guys know that we have a special going on, a flash sale on the site right now. You can see right there on the bottom of your screen. You can get 50% off a ScoopDuck membership using promo code GODUCKS. This is a really, really awesome deal, you guys. No better time with the matchup. And then, of course, if you read my work, if you read what we do at ScoopDuck, you know that recruiting is a priority for us. So I've just been doing a bunch of interviews and getting all kinds of scoop as guys get ready to head out to Eugene. And Dan Lanning and the Ducks look to add to one of the best classes in the country for 2025. So really special time at the site right now, Justin.
Yeah. And, again, I'll just say it super quickly. Max and I love doing the pods and we love doing some of this stuff, but that doesn't pay our bills. What does is subscriptions to ScoopDuck. So if you like that we do this and that we have time to be able to sit and do this on a daily or semi-daily basis or whatever, you can support us through there. That's the best way you can do that. So we appreciate all the help there.
Definitely appreciate it. Your guys' support means the world, and it keeps us going, keeps the site going. So, Justin, one of the big thoughts for me that kind of is at the front of my mind ahead of this week's game, I don't know if we've ever discussed it, but this concept or this idea of a marquee win, of a major win in Dan Lanning's tenure at Oregon. He's won some good games, but I don't think anything would come close to beating the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes in Eugene in front of 60,000 roaring fans, 5 stars galore all over the place coming to visit. And in your first year in the Big Ten Conference, like just those are some of the big things that come to mind for me when I look at what a win would mean for Oregon. So maybe that's kind of where we can start off looking into this game, how it could serve as Dan Lanning's first major marquee win over one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, it's something I wrote about on Monday. Is just that this game has like you said, a chance for a signature win for Lanning, which I just don't think he has yet at Oregon, and that's not a negative. That's just being honest. That's just and I think that he had 2 opportunities last year against the Huskies to get a little bit more of a signature win, and unfortunately, as we know, that didn't work out. So, love everything he's doing, but this is different. This is, it's been a constant fight for Lanning basically since he's got here to, show that he's here to win and show that he's building a program, that's ready to compete and ready to win, and show that he's ready for these big games, and that, Big Ten or SEC or whatever, Oregon's not going to be pushed around. And so, like, this is it. I mean, I think, I think he could lose. Obviously it wouldn't be a signature win, but I think he could lose a tight game and it would still kind of confirm most of those things. Like, obviously not quite over the hump and where you want to be, but getting really damn close, right? You get blown out like you did it against Georgia, obviously then people are like, all right, is this just still a really good team that's not a great team yet? I mean, that's going to be the question. And then, of course, if you win, you get a signature win, and you can show how much improvement you've made from that opener against Georgia that was obviously completely lopsided. And yeah, this is his chance at a signature win. He's missed on a couple already, and I'm guessing there's probably going to be more down the line as well.
And when you talk about those games that he's kind of missed on, right, Justin, the 2023 matchups against Washington, in Seattle, that was a big game. In Las Vegas for the Pac-12 title, those are 2 games that obviously Duck fans would have loved to win, but we're not looking at a situation where they got blown out. I think they lost by 3 points each time. So you were in it. You had that game within reach. And I think maybe more so with the Pac-12 title game, I think that Lanning showed that he has this ability to make adjustments, because Oregon came out in that second game probably as flat as I've ever seen them. I was like so shocked. I'm like, are they about to get the doors blown off of them? But then they came back, they made their adjustments, and they were able to be right within striking distance. So I not that I want to look at it through a lens of, okay, even if you lose, it could still be good, but maybe it's kind of getting into this broader point of this one game doesn't define your season. It doesn't define Dan Lanning as a head coach. But my God, you could just get so much juice nationally and respect too for Oregon. I think even though Oregon does really well and gets some good wins, they're not going to get, like, this is why you came to the Big Ten, to get these premier matchups against some of the very best in the sport, because you can't take away from a win over Ohio State. You can't detract from that, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the move to the Big Ten, obviously, money and all those things on the line, networks, promotion, all that stuff. I get it, but this is a part of that too. Being able to face, top competition week in and week out. I mean, that's why there's only one G5 auto bid, right? And maybe that's a bad illustration, but that the point remains. If you're in the Big Ten, if you're in the SEC, you're more than likely going to get multiple bids into the college football playoff. And who knows, they might even continue to expand the playoff. We have no idea. So for right now, if you're Oregon, and let's just say for whatever reason you lose to Ohio State this time, and who knows down the line, it's no longer you lose and you're out, right? We have to understand that it's no longer you lose and you're out, right? Like, look at Georgia. I think they they lost to Bama 2 weeks ago, and they're already back to 4 or 5 or wherever they are in the AP poll. I mean, again, it's no longer if you lose, you're out. So, for Oregon, having the chance to play Ohio State, a conference game now, of this magnitude, you want them to win. We hope they win, all that, of course, but we could be real about it. A loss doesn't totally kill this season off for Oregon. And it's going to be interesting because to me, Oregon has just been a team that has gotten better as the weeks have gone on, right? Struggled out the gate with Idaho, played well enough to beat Boise State, who we now know is actually a pretty good football team. You looked better against Oregon State. I think you looked, pretty good against UCLA, looked really good against Michigan State for most of that game. So it feels like this team's getting better. And that's the key. You want to hit your stride. You want to hit your peak at the right time. And I mean, quite frankly, that's not for another 3 or 4 weeks, but hopefully you can do enough here to beat Ohio State on the way.
And that's been one of the hard things for me, Justin, just throughout the season when I look at how I feel about this Oregon team. They're 5-0. That's what matters. But also, we don't want to be sunshine pumpers. I feel like this team and the fans deserve to know when we think they're kind of coming up short or not meeting expectations. So I think they got to this game 5-0. That's what matters. I think that's what the expectation was in the offseason. But there's been some bumps in the road. There's been some hiccups. There's been some speed bumps. There's been some gross turnovers, but there's been some great offensive showings, and the defense looks really good. So kind of a weird path to get here. But I think that you, to some degree, see a little bit of that with Ohio State as well, as far as we don't completely know what we have with either of these teams, because Ohio State comes in 5-0, wins in back-to-back weeks over Iowa and Michigan State, but their non-conference schedule wasn't exactly a murderer's row with Marshall, Western Michigan, and Akron. So this is really going to be a litmus test on Saturday for both of these teams to see what they can really do. I think the expectation, at least big picture, is that Ohio State should be able to beat Oregon, but Oregon is kind of trying to knock on that door and say, hey, we're here. You see us in the top 5, and we don't plan on going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, right now, to just being honest, the best win for either team is Boise State. Boise State's the most quality win for either team right now. So, I look at Ohio State as, yeah, that's a great team. They're talented across the board, both sides of the ball. We know that. I think Oregon is as well. But yeah, I mean, you kind of wonder because they've struggled. They've had huge periods of struggle with teams that they should have absolutely dominated. And they've had a couple games where the final score didn't really totally reflect that game. Just kind of a lull fest for 2 or 3 quarters or whatever the case might be. So I don't see them as, when Oregon played Georgia a couple years ago, I looked at that team and went, holy cow, they're going to be really tough to beat, if not impossible. They went on to win the national championship, as we know. I don't see that team this year. I don't see that version of a team in college football that oh man, there's no way we can beat them. I mean, Texas is really good. I don't debate that. Georgia's still a good football team. Bama, despite the loss to Vandy, is still a good football team. Oregon's right there. And I still don't think we've seen the best version of Oregon. And if we do, when we do, they'll be able to run with any of those guys. It's just, it's going to be a matter of staying healthy. It's going to be a matter of execution. It's going to be a matter of not making mistakes. All the things that matter in big games like this weekend matter throughout the season. So, I mean, so far, like you said, Oregon's 5-0. They're relatively healthy overall, very few bumps and bruises. And I continue to believe that the offensive line and the team as a whole is getting better week in and week out, getting more consistent.
Yeah, consistency is definitely a good word to use there, Justin. And one of the things that's on my mind as I kind of start breaking down this Ohio State team and what I'm going to have my eye on come Saturday, Ohio State's wide receivers. I mean, we got to talk about them. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, they've been putting on a show all year. Jeremiah Smith's the true freshman sensation, just an absolute cheat code of a receiver. And Kyle, oh my God, Will Howard, not Kyle, what am I saying? Will Howard has obviously loved throwing him the ball because you just get that thing within reach, and Smith is able to bring it in. So one of the things that I'm going to have my eye on really, and I sent it to you earlier today for our roundtable over at ScoopDuck, this is Jabbar Muhammad's game in my mind. This is his chance to show I'm a first round caliber corner. I'm one of the best in the sport. It doesn't matter that I'm 5'10" because I'm one of the best technicians that there is out here going against a 6'3" guy like Jeremiah Smith or a 6'1" guy like Emeka Ibuka. I think this is the game that he has had circled on his schedule, on the Oregon schedule, and we're going to get a really good taste of how well he really stacks up. I think we got a little bit of a taste against Michigan in the national championship game, but we know that was kind of a run-heavy team, obviously, with Michigan. So it's a huge opportunity for Jabbar Muhammad on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a huge opportunity for anybody because there's going to be, I don't even know, but I would guarantee that there's scouts from probably every team at this game this weekend. So, I mean, whether there's any GMs or not, but there will certainly be scouts from probably every NFL team this weekend in Eugene. And yeah, I mean, Jabbar Muhammad is one guy that, has a chance to raise his NFL profile. They're going to put on the tape. The scouts will put on the tape and see what they see here because there's no doubt Jeremiah Smith is truly elite at wide receiver. But to me, what makes Ohio State dangerous is just the fact that they're balanced on offense. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. They're very balanced. That makes them very difficult. I'd rather face a team like Michigan that you say, hey, we got to stop the run. Well, okay, we'll get up there and stop the run because they can't throw the ball. Ohio State certainly can throw the ball, and they can certainly run the football. I think their running backs are averaging somewhere around 9 yards a carry. It's just absurd. So, to play a team like that that's balanced becomes very dangerous. And I don't think Will Howard's lighting the world on fire as a quarterback, but he's not making mistakes. He's running the offense. He's doing the things that matter, just getting the football, into the hands of his playmakers that he's surrounded with. And so, that makes him a quality quarterback because he's doing those things. But yeah, I mean, he's no CJ Stroud. It's just going to be a matter of Oregon. Oregon's basically on defense going to have to take their chances. They're going to have to, get lined up and know that it's an obvious rushing situation or passing situation and be ready for it and take some gambles along the way. And, those explosive plays are going to be dangerous. They can't let Ohio State break off big runs, and they can't let them break off those big throws to Jeremiah Smith and the rest and Ibuka and anybody else that might catch it.
And from a defensive standpoint for Oregon, you have to feel really confident, at least going into this game, about how the front seven's been playing. Derek Harmon has been every bit as good as advertised coming over from Michigan State. He's been an absolute game wrecker, and he's not the only one. Jordan Birch had probably his best game as a Duck last week against Michigan State, and he followed that up from a great showing against UCLA. So he looks like a guy that is continuing to put it together, and maybe this is another situation like we've talked about, Justin, where you're an offensive coordinator. You're Chip Kelly, former Oregon head coach, of course, now in Columbus. You got to pick which one of those guys do you really need to kind of push all your chips in to contain, because you just got to know there's another guy somewhere else in that line that is going to get freed up. So that's another really interesting kind of storyline to watch here is that Ohio State offensive line against the Oregon defensive line. The linebackers moving back a level, they've been playing some awesome ball. Bryce Betcher, Devin Jackson, Jeffrey Bossa looks like he's got his feet underneath him. Justin Jacobs, again, this is the game that you come to Oregon for. He knows Ohio State well from his time at Iowa. So I think in terms of just some questions that we can get answered, it's probably going to be in the secondary, not because they haven't been playing well. That's not what I'm saying at all, but they haven't faced anybody of this caliber of Ohio State. So it's not just Jabbar Muhammad. It's going to be Nico Reed. It's going to be Brandon Johnson, who we kind of haven't heard from in a while, but we know he flies around. He's one of the best DBs in that secondary. Kobe Savage, Dante Manning. Like, there's a lot of guys that I think are going to be called upon on Saturday. And if you get some really solid contributions from your secondary, maybe a couple turnovers, a couple PBUs, that's going to be big. And I think it could go a long way in Oregon just kind of taking Ohio State's best punch and managing those momentum swings. That's going to be big.
Well, the best friend for those defensive backs is going to be the pressure up front. So if Oregon can get pressure and move the quarterback around and get him off pocket and get him out off of his rhythm, that's going to be everything. Because if Oregon can get that kind of pressure, I mean, he can run a little bit, but he's still not going to burn. He's not quite the burner that Aiden Childs or some of the other guys with some wheels are. So to me, I think the defensive backs, they're gonna have to do their job. We know Nico Reed, Dante Manning, they're gonna have their work cut out for them. But ultimately, if Oregon can get that pressure, because Ohio State's offensive line is good. It's not elite, it's good, and so there are going to be opportunities there for these guys to create pressure. And so I know Ohio State's defensive line is good, but I mean, let's face it, that means that, Oregon's offensive line is well practiced by going up against Derek Harmon and Jordan Birch week in and week out every day. So, this is one of those games that 100% the line of scrimmage is going to have a massive impact on the game for both sides. I mean, how well, does Ohio State's offensive line do? How well does Oregon's offensive line do? And what kind of pressure can both those defensive lines get? Because that's gonna really have a huge impact on this game.
The line of scrimmage has been a big priority for Dan Lanning, and it's going to be a point of emphasis once again this week against the Buckeyes, who are favored, according to the folks over at FanDuel, by 3.5 points as of 11:12 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday morning. So Vegas thinks this one's going to be close, Justin, and I tend to agree with them. But again, my biggest matchup is definitely going to be the skill talent on the outside. What do we think about this line as we kind of get closer to this game?
Yeah, opened up at 2.5 over the weekend, ballooned up to 4 yesterday, back down to 3.5 today. Not a huge swing, right? And we're talking about a point and a half, but obviously it's kind of hovering around that 3.5 mark, however you want to label it. That's kind of the line, which is basically a field goal. So, there's no doubt in my mind that if this game was in Ohio State, that line would be up. It would be up probably closer to 6.5, somewhere in there, because it's in Eugene, which I do believe is a massive advantage for Oregon here, at least this time. That keeps that line down around 3, which ultimately becomes pretty much a pick'em game. So, again, if Oregon can play a clean game, if they can avoid penalties, which have plagued them at times, if they can avoid execution mistakes, and to me, that's where the defensive backs for Oregon have been most susceptible, is when they've missed, been out of position and missed guys, either running by them or trick play, against Boise State. We've seen those kind of be the biggest plays that Oregon's given up in the secondary. So hopefully, again, being at home and maybe the crowd being a little bit quieter than being in Columbus might help the Ducks, and is keeping that line around 3, I believe.
One of the great things about being at home, if you're an Oregon fan, you can check out Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try out their homemade tortillas. They got great food, great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Also, in other Ranchito Grill related news, Justin, it sounds like you and I might be making our way out there for a little meet and greet this week. What's the latest there?
Yeah, I posted it on ScoopDuck, but yeah, 5:30 range. We'll be there, and I know there's some folks that organize some duck clubs. I know at times they've had parents of players come through, so I'm not promising anything. Dan Lanning's certainly not going to be there, but if you want to see Max and I know we plan on coming through at the very least, and at least having a beer and meeting some of you. So Friday night around 5:30 or so, if you're free, come on through and check us out at Ranchito, and you guys can say hi to Ruben in person.
There you go. Yeah, it should be a fun one. Justin, I don't even remember the last time I saw you in person, so that'll be fun just to have a drink with you, and have a good time, and putting the face to the name with the fans. Getting to see us is always a super special experience, because we're not always behind our laptops as we are now, but it'll be a fun one. So just wanted to put that on your guys' radar. Ranchito's awesome, and Ruben's the man, so greatly appreciate his support of the show. Justin, we talked a lot about the game. Let's talk about some recruiting, because it is a tremendous opportunity for Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks on the recruiting trail, with just recruits galore coming in this weekend. I've got a bunch of updates from the Michigan State visitors, but now we're kind of turning ahead to look at some of the Ohio State visitors. I think one of the big ones we have to talk about here, Justin, is newly 2025 reclassified defensive lineman Jakeem Stewart out of New Orleans, Louisiana, Edna Karr High School. 5-star defensive lineman, just an absolutely elite talent. Everyone's been going after this guy, Justin, but it seems like there's a little bit of separation, and he's kind of focusing on Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, and USC. What are your thoughts on Jakeem Stewart coming to town?
Yeah, maybe this is Kayvon Thibodeau 2.0. And what I mean by that, I don't mean the player, I mean the recruitment. I think this is a guy that Oregon, I just don't think that Oregon leads for. He's got basically a top 4 that he's working with, and I think Oregon might be 3 or 4. And so, I think this is your chance to showcase Autzen Stadium, have them get a close-up look at your defense, really show them how you can develop them, how you coach, all those things. Because we know even Kayvon's talked about it, just being able to see that Washington game, really turned his recruitment and put Oregon kind of in position to ultimately land him. So that's how I think this one needs to play out for Oregon and Stewart. They need to nail this one. I think everyone's felt for quite some time now that the reclassification was really just a formality. So I think Oregon's handled his recruitment already kind of based off that. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at it, I think LSU is probably the team to beat. USC is probably just behind them, although I think they're fading, opening the door for Oregon. And so again, maybe this is Tibbs 2.0 and how his recruitment could play out.
And the other thing that kind of comes to mind for me, Justin, I don't know why I didn't really think about it until last week, I think it was. Oregon obviously has a need for defensive linemen in this class. I wouldn't call it a glaring need because they have hit the position so hard in 2023 and 2024, but you only have one true defensive lineman committed in 2025, and that's Matthew Johnson out of De La Salle in Concord, California. So Stewart's reclassification, putting him into the 2025 class, like you can, to some degree, I know we've talked about Trajan Odom a little bit in the past. He's committed to Ohio State. I don't really know if the Ducks have kind of stayed involved there or not, but if you're going to put a lot of chips in on a recruit, if you just kind of have to decide your priorities here. We know the Ducks had Josiah Sharma, but he flipped to Texas. The names are small. The pool is small for elite defensive linemen for Oregon here in the 2025 class as we get closer to signing day. And it seems like this is the perfect time for them to turn up the heat on Jakeem Stewart.
Yeah, I agree. It was never a good defensive line group out west in this cycle. It was never like, hey, there's 4 or 5 names and Oregon just needs to get 4 of them. Like, I mean, it's Sharma, it's Matt Johnson, and there just isn't much after that, So I know that this one here, and frankly, I think Sharma is probably a good player, but like that's not a make it or break it recruit in my mind. Like Oregon had him, and that's great that he was committed. Again, keeping a big body out west. He flipped to Texas, and I'm looking at it like, okay, I mean, like that doesn't, where Stewart, I'm not saying that he'll make or break this class, but that's a guy that definitely elevates this class. That's a commitment that you get that raises the profile of this recruiting class, that kind of changes the game a little bit. And like you said, yeah, they don't have they don't have hardly any of a defensive line class committed in the cycle, which was always going to be difficult. But given the way they've recruited in years past, they don't need to sign 7 or 8 guys. They kind of just needed 3 or 4 really to kind of keep supplementing the depth that they've already built. So we'll see. I think Stewart is one that, they're going to probably go, all in for and make a hell of a run for. So we'll see if they can, overtake USC and LSU. And again, there's nothing like, the weather's supposed to be 75 degrees, 4:30 kickoff. The students, it'll be the second game back for the students. First game was on a Friday anyways. That place, Autzen's going to be popping. It's going to be insane.
The last thing to note here with Jakeem Stewart is that it looks like this is going to be his Oregon official visit, Justin. So, like I was listening to you with Josh Nerber the other day, kind of double-edged sword getting that first trip. But if you can make a really good impression, maybe you set the bar and everyone's chasing that after that visit. But we'll have to see what happens with Jakeem Stewart. Another guy we have to talk about, Justin, he's been kind of in the headlines lately, and that is 2025 Oregon cornerback commit Brandon Finney out of Owings Mills, Maryland, McDonough High School. He's been taking some trips. He was at Michigan and then most recently at Penn State over the weekend. And Oregon has 2 cornerbacks committed to this class, Finney along with Dorian Brew. But this is a guy that has continued to rise in the rankings and seems like a guy that a lot of schools are kind of coming around on. But gosh, it seems like an understatement to say that this is someone, Finney, that the Ducks would love to hang on to, and getting him back on campus is super, super important.
Yeah, coming off a Penn State visit, Penn State, Michigan are both continuing to be involved. Originally, when he committed to Oregon, it felt like it was Penn State or Oregon. Obviously, Michigan's clawed their way into it now, following his commitment. What I don't like is that one of these schools is an outlier, right? And it's Oregon. Penn State and Michigan are much closer to where he lives. Oregon is the outlier. That can be good and that can be bad. So, I'm not going to take too much away from that. So far, I think the staff feels pretty good here, but they're aware. I mean, they're aware he's taking these visits. They're aware that maybe there's a push to possibly stay a little bit closer to home. So, yeah, getting this visit, letting him come and see this atmosphere, this game, win or lose, come and see this atmosphere in this game, and being able to say, hey, look, man, these are the games you want. This is why you're coming to Oregon. That could really go a long ways towards maybe just shoring up his commitment. I think it's still pretty solid, but this certainly won't hurt because, and I know I've said this, and the way the new recruiting calendar works makes it incredibly difficult, but nothing in recruiting, okay, disregard NIL. Pre-NIL, nothing trumps getting kids on campus for an official visit to Oregon at any time. Let them see a game, let them experience it, let them walk around the campus. Like, nothing makes a bigger impression on that, in my mind, ever for kids at Oregon is recruiting. Yeah, there's NIL now and stuff like that, and that's a different whole deal there. But I think we feel good that Oregon can be pretty much competitive in most cases on NIL. It's just going to be, hey, man, having a chance to bring these guys out for a game like this, or you know what, if they can get guys on campus when Oregon plays Washington later this year, that'll be another big one. And so, I love that Oregon's getting these guys on campus, Finney, Stewart, and some of the other guys.
Another thing that won't hurt at all for Oregon as they continue to recruit Finney as if he's uncommitted, right? That's an approach that Ducks take for a lot of these guys. They have a couple of DBs in the NFL that are coming off pretty strong weekends. Christian Gonzalez got a pick. Diamador Lenore got a blocked punt that he returned for a touchdown for my Niners, even though they lost. What the heck is going on in San Francisco right now? I couldn't tell you. But it's shaping up to be a really big weekend for the Ducks, Justin. And I know we wanted to stick around 30. So any other guys you wanted to talk about or kind of recruiting notes that come to mind?
Yeah, I think, maybe this is a spot where we dump off, but I know we'll do another podcast in the next day or two. You and I will, and we can go heavy recruiting centric. I think to tease people to come back for it, we're probably looking at at least around 10 5-stars potentially coming to campus this weekend across the classes. So not 10 5-stars in 2025, but you start looking at Jakeem Stewart and Dallas Wilson is coming back, and DeCorian Moore, guys that are committed. Obviously getting the commits back is great. Those guys will, peer recruit the guys while they're there, keeps them firmly committed as well. But no, I think, you and I can go over this, and there's a big reason to come back and watch the next show because, like I said, we could be talking about 10, 12 5-stars that will be on campus this weekend for Oregon, and that is absolutely insane.
It's a tremendous opportunity for the Ducks, and we're going to have you covered through all of it over on ScoopDuck. The other note that I'll kind of just wrap up with here on the recruiting trail, Justin, we're going to continue to track all the latest developments, get a visitor list together for you guys. We already have an early look posted on ScoopDuck. The Ducks have a primetime kickoff spot, which is going to allow more time for visitors to make that trip to Oregon, because we all know with the caliber of recruits that Oregon's going after, guys in the South, guys in the Northeast, like Finney. I guess Maryland's kind of out in that way. In the Midwest, like it's not easy to get out to Eugene. So this later kickoff is going to be great, and game day is going to be on campus. So it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere out there in Eugene. But I think we're going to wrap it there for today. If you want to find more of that guy, Justin Hopkins, you can follow him on Twitter/X at JHopkinsSD. Find me on any platform at mtorresports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck On 3 YouTube channel and come and see us at scoopduck.com, where you can get 50% off of a membership using the promo code GODUCKS. But until next time, appreciate you guys talking some ball with us, and we will see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.